How many of you remember being taught to be polite? Your pleases and thank yous. We all do, right? And some of us remember trying to teach that to our kids. I remember saying to Michelle, okay, Michelle, here is your healthy, sugar-free, high-fiber snack bar. What do you say? I only give cookies to these guys. That's a funny story. My daughter will give me grief every time my nephews come to visit because I buy them Fruit Loops and Count Chocula. We never got that. I wouldn't hand her her snack or whatever it was until she said, please, right? And after she had it, sometimes she'd remember her thank you, but more often than not, she had to be prompted. How often does that happen for us? We go into a store and a restaurant and we will say that we want something, and sometimes we say please, and sometimes we'll ask for something from our spouses or from our kids, and we'll say please, but how often do we remember to say thank you? It's an afterthought at best for most of us. And in this last week, we gathered at cenotaphs across the country to say thank you for lives lost, for lives burdened. And it's almost as if we have to have a national day and a red reminder so that we remember to say thank you. It's almost as if we have to have prompting to say thank you. In these last couple of weeks, we've been talking about this simple prayer. Father, you are good. I need help. They need help. Thank you is the next line. And we've got more of these little cards at the back, so you can grab one today for yourself or for a friend. God commands us more than 100 times in the Bible to be thankful. In 1 Chronicles 16, it says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever." Psalm 30 says, "Sing praises to the Lord, O you, his faithful ones, and give thanks to his holy name." And in 1 Thessalonians 5, Paul says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Give thanks in all circumstances, not just the good times, but when we are in distress, when we are in trouble, when we are in the hospital, when we are in a fix, when we are in a pickle, even then, give thanks. Even when it seems like we are struggling to find something to be thankful for. In the book of Acts, Paul is traveling around the early church, and he was on his way to Italy as a prisoner. He was going to be tried, perhaps tortured, perhaps put to death, and he was on a ship, and the ship was in distress. It was in a pickle. We read that the seas were rough. They were being pounded by the storm so violently that they began to throw the cargo overboard and then the tackle overboard. And finally, in Paul's words, it says, "All hope of our being saved was at last abandoned." And you would think that in this time of great difficulty, in the ship headed for prison, he would have absolutely no reason to say thank you. And yet, here's what it says. Just before daybreak, Paul urged all of them to take some food, saying, "Today is the 14th day that you have been in suspense and remaining without food, having eaten nothing. Therefore, I urge you to take some food, for it will help you survive." After he said this, he took bread, and giving thanks to God, in the presence of all, he broke it and began to eat. In the midst of everything that was going on, Paul stopped. He took time to say thank you to God for this meager bit of bread that he would get. I am absolutely positive he had already prayed the I need you, they need you part of this prayer. And now he says, thanks. And then they threw what little food they had left, all the wheat, it says, into the sea. They put everything in God's hands. And later on we read that not one perished. Giving thanks, showing gratitude when life hands you the worst situations is cathartic. Max Lucado writes, saying thanks proclaims, I'm not disadvantaged, disabled, victimized, scandaled, forgotten, or ignored. I am blessed. Gratitude is a dialysis of sorts. It flushes self-pity out of our systems. What a great way to think about it. Giving thanks for God's blessings in our lives. Giving thanks for God's goodness. Gratitude, saying thank you, declares that no matter what life throws at us, we acknowledge that we are blessed. Ingratitude was the original sin of Adam and Eve. Rather than being thankful for all that God had provided, for the beautiful sunrises and sunsets, for having food that they didn't have to work for having peace in a place where they never had to worry about it. Instead of that thankfulness, the serpent caused Adam and Eve to be discontent with what they couldn't have. And this discontent led to ingratitude, and it led to rebellion, and it led to the casting out from the garden. Ingratitude is the devil's brew, and it is distilled from hard hearts and bitterness. A hard heart in the midst of the garden, in the midst of perfection. It can happen even there. And this passage we read from Deuteronomy, in it, we are hearing the people of Israel. After the Exodus from Egypt, God's people continued to complain to God about how they were living in the wilderness. They weren't happy about having to wander around for 40 days. They have forgotten already how God had miraculously delivered them out of Egypt. And God judged their ingratitude, and he sent serpents, the real, living serpents and scorpions, as Sheena read, into their lives to remind them. If the Hebrew people had acted with gratitude, what would have been different? Do you think they would have maybe landed in Canaan after a year or two instead of 40? If Adam and Eve had chosen differently, would our world be different? And if we choose gratitude, how would our world be different? How would our perspective on each day and on our lives be different? How could a simple act of gratitude every morning change who we are and how we act? What if in the morning we woke up saying thank you as often as we say please? Too often it goes without being said. We may start this simple prayer, Father, and that next little bit, you are good. Sometimes we forget that part and we go directly into I need help. They need help. And don't get me wrong, that part is vitally important as well. But if we are not saying, Father, you are good, then we forget the thank you. We forget the gratitude that we should be expressing to God. It prompts us How would your day be different if you started out saying, thank you? Mark says it really well when he said gratitude is a dialysis of sorts. It flushes self-pity out of our systems. I want to read to you a story that he recounts in his book. And there is a copy of this in the library if anyone wants to pick it up. It's a really great book. Rebecca had spent the last 3 years in pain. On a scale of 1 to 10, the doctor explained, she is a 12 every day. Rebecca's pancreas had shut down. After a dozen operations and changes in medication, there was no solution in sight. Pretty tough challenge, but Rebecca is a tough kid. She is 10 years old. She has fudge brown hair, eyes that sparkle, a weatherproof smile, and a book of miracles. She showed it to me. I thought she was asleep. Her mother and I conversed in whispered tones in the corner of the hospital room. Homemade sketches hung on the walls. A covey of stuffed animals occupied the couch. Someone had sent a cookie bouquet and I eyed it. Mommy, Rebecca's voice was groggy. What, honey? Can you show Mr. Max my miracle book? It's a spiral notebook, edges weathered, adorned with crayon flowers, stars, and an occasional clown. In the handwriting of a child, miracles. I slept all night last night. Daddy snuck a puppy into the hospital. Mummy's going to place a Christmas tree in the corner. Her body is in revolt, her parents are concerned, the doctors are confused, but Rebecca has made a decision. She is going to thank God for miracles. If Rebecca can find reasons to say thanks, can't I? Give thanks in all circumstances, in all situations, because when we say thank you, we are celebrating a gift, no matter what that gift is for us. We celebrate an immense gift every time we celebrate communion, don't we? We hear the words of Jesus as he begins the meal. He says, when he had taken a loaf of bread, he broke it and gave thanks. And he gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is broken for you." He gave thanks, even knowing that his days were going to come to an end. He gave thanks, even knowing that there was someone sitting at the table with him who would betray him, an intimate friend. He gave thanks, knowing that he would be dragged away and spit on and tortured and abused. He gave thanks, knowing he would be hung on a cross and died for the very people that were doing this to him. And he gave thanks over and over, at the beginning of the meal and at the end of the meal. He took a cup, and after giving thanks, he said, "Take this and divide it amongst yourselves. This is for you." So when you look at your life, remember to say thank you to the one who has given you that life, to the one who has given you his life. Our passage this morning goes like this. When you have eaten your fill and have built fine houses and live in them, and when your herds and flocks have multiplied and your silver and gold is multiplied, and truthfully, we are that blessed here in Canada, aren't we? Living in a country of much and a country of peace. When you have done that, then do not exalt yourself, forgetting the Lord your God. Do not say, "My power and the might of my own hand has gotten me this wealth," but remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth. Remember the Lord your God. Remember to thank him. What do you have to be thankful for today? What do you have? I asked the kids, I'm going to ask you. Health? Peace? Sunshine? Grace? Jesus? We have so much. We just need to say thank you. In the book, Max's wife gives Max this little suggestion, and we could try it. He said, she told me to take the letters of the alphabet and every day say, today I'm thankful for A, for apples, B for books, C for chocolate, and so on. Make the list your own. Be lavish. There might be a letter that you come to. You might come to the letter M and you'll have 9 or 10. But be thankful each and every day. Let gratitude serve as a dialysis for your soul, cleansing you from complaining and self-pity. Maybe from time to time, we do need to be prompted to say our pleases and thank yous. So think of this as your cue. All together now. What do you say?
Thank you.
Thank you.